Our speaker, Nicole Schapiro, is a true American success story, except she's Hungarian. The end of our story finds her a successful international keynote speaker, consultant, change agent, trainer, coach, award-winning poet, New York Times best-selling author of Negotiating for Your Life. She has been the guest on the BBC, CNN, and Oprah. Her book is printed in 3 languages, and the San Francisco Chronicle wrote, "One of the best contributions to business books." Her clients say she has a magical ability to understand, motivate, and communicate with people in any diverse culture at all levels. The middle of our story finds Nicole at age 30 with a master's in industrial psychology and the first woman senior vice president of sales and marketing at a New York financial institution. Nicole has lived a very interesting life. The beginning of the story proves what lengths some individuals are willing to go through to achieve what most of us take for granted. I am confident as you listen to her story, you will realize how lucky we are to call ourselves Americans or British. By the way, I told Nicole if she needs a little longer than 30 minutes to take it. She has agreed to stay until 9 o'clock for our questions to discuss In Pursuit of Freedom, from communist Hungary to freedom in the USA. Please welcome Nicole Schapiro.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I feel very excited and honored to speak to you and speak with you today. Freedom is not free. I grew up, well, some people think I never grew up, but I lived in Budapest, Hungary. And the first 10 years of my life, I lived in a convent because my mother was taken to Auschwitz in the Holocaust. Interestingly enough, and I am kind of saying it's something towards the end of my speech, then I'll come back, the people who have helped me a lot were prostitutes later on in my life. So it helped me to be a girl growing up in a convent and understanding that love is important no matter who you are. So back to Budapest now. Hungary was a communist country, not by choice. They came in 1948 and took away everything from us. Anything we owned as far as homes, jobs, and communism was very, very difficult. Mostly we were hungry, stood in line, at which time on standing line for bread and milk and very basics taught me how to network very early on. What do you know where we could find more bread? Where do you think we can find some heat? And talking to each other and making the connections, standing online to fight hunger was one of the things that still helps me to be a networker. There was a time when the university students decided it's enough. It's enough, we need to fight. We need to try to get back the Hungary where people could be free with food, with education that we're choosing. So the Hungarian Revolution started. And in about 3 days, my father became, who was a physician, part of the underground in terms of helping people. And people from the underground came and said, I know you've been hoping and wanting to go to America. your whole family for many, many years. And this is the opportunity while during the revolution is happening and the borders are open, but this is the time to leave. Today, you can't wait. My parents said, we need to have a family meeting. My brother was incredibly sick. He was a young child. And they knew that they could not take on a trip escaping from Hungary. So we sat down and my mother said, now you know, Nicole, that for years I made you walk towards the border every Sunday while your friends were playing. You hated that. I kept saying, we're gonna walk to America because it's very important to anticipate and plan for your dream to come true. And I really did learn a lot of choices, which way to go in case I had to escape from people who wanted to catch me as I was escaping. Well, during the revolution, the tanks were coming in, and I was overhearing the people telling my father, they are coming tomorrow. We have to stop them. They are going to destroy all of Budapest and all of us. And I remembered what my mother kept saying growing up with her. You become what you focus on. You have to take action if you want to have something happen. I was 15 years old and I thought, action, the tanks are coming. We have to stop them. And I knew the way we stopped things at that time was Molotov cocktails. I knew where they were coming from. So I sneaked out, although my mother and father wanted me to be involved. They didn't quite thought that my involvement should be stopping tanks. But I thought I could. So I found the men who were making Molotov cocktails, and looking down the road, I saw the tank is coming. And I said, let me throw the Molotov cocktail. They didn't answer, and one of them said, does your family know where you are, kid? Go home. I learned then a negotiating tool that you don't have to answer every question. You have to stay with what you want to achieve. And I said, okay, guys, who is the smallest among us? Who is the one who least likely would be seen? And one guy said, you win. You could be the first one to try. We'll just tell you when. And we say when. You holding the Molotov cocktail and you start running. That's exactly what happened. And it was an incredible, scary, and exciting thing to be part of fighting such a special way, certainly never done that before, for freedom that we were so hungry from and so lack of. I hit the tank, I ran back, and they were ready to point out that there comes another one in about 7 minutes. They thought I was terrific and I have a chance to do another good for Hungary. I was meanwhile watching the tank I blew up and the man standing outside of the tank on the top, half of his face burning. I wasn't sure how very expensive freedom can be. And then they handed me another one, another bottle, and they lit it. And I started to run and I threw it. Then I ran back. They were screaming, yeah, I am sure more is coming. And I knew I had to leave. I'd done my work. I went home and my parents said, this is it. We found from the people from the underground that the border will be closed again. We're losing the revolution. and you have to go alone tomorrow to America. Yes, I said goodbye. I felt both anxious, scared, and I knew what I had to do to get to America and bring my family. My mother, who was a Holocaust survivor, a mother who really took care of me. I had to go to America for all of us. I remember though, one time when we were so hungry in Hungary, not funny. It was pretty hard. The only thing that left was an onion, this kind of red onion. And I kept saying to my mother, oh my God, this morning I realized it's my birthday. My mother said, it is, and I almost didn't want to bring it up. And then I saw this onion and I knew that we could celebrate. So let's pretend it is a chocolate cake, your favorite chocolate cake with whipped cream. And I said, but Mom, it's an onion. She said, it is a chocolate cake. Start smelling it. And most incredibly, I smelled chocolate. And she started to peel it and started to cut it. And she said, taste the whipped cream. And we ended up eating part of the onion and believing and tasting and feeling it was a chocolate cake. That was something that was a gift, because from that on, I could really believe, feel, see with all my body and mind what happens and what I want to feel and how I can be really energetic to work and fight towards freedom. It was time to leave. I left, saying goodbye to my mother with a few people who were also ready to go. We knew exactly where to go. As I said, my mother made me walk towards the border over and over again. And I knew that there are choices. I knew that I have to remember that her saying, you become what you focus on, because as I was walking, I was freezing, and all around me were people dead and frozen. When I left Hungary, the border, the people who lived on the border, who were telling me exactly which way is best to go, I gave them my mother's diamond ring from her wedding to let me go with them and find the exact way, which is the best way. They took the ring, they walked with me for 10 minutes. They pointed ahead of me and said, do you see those twinkling lights? That's Austria. That's where you're going. Just keep following the twinkling lights. And I said, well, how about you? I thought you're gonna come with me. Well, we don't. It wasn't the first time in my life that I realized that people will not be honest, that people will not honor what they promise. But I had to focus on where I was going instead of hold on to my disappointment. You become what you focus on. And I was going light step, light step. My foot was hurting, but my heart was singing because I got closer and closer to the goal that we've been dreaming about, that we were talking about. My mother used to read quietly, hiding in the closet. about America. Why were we hiding in the closet? Because communism meant that if they heard you talk about America, they would have taken away our home, possibly shoot us on the spot, possibly put us in jail. So talking about America was not safe. I was almost there. I was incredibly exhausted and incredibly excited. And I saw some cars way over there towards the light. And I realized there were people waiting from Austria for us to arrive. I had frozen feet. 7 days I was in a hospital. And then I kept saying, I gotta go to Vienna. I gotta go to the American embassy. And I gotta go to make sure that I get to America. In a few days, I ended up in Austria. And I was looking for the American embassy. And there was a big line. And people kept saying, well, we can't quite go to America because the quota is filled. No more Americans are allowed. I couldn't believe it. I knew that's not possible for me not to go. I was standing around. I decided I'm not going to go away. And I saw this young boy came out of the American embassy. And I went up to him and I heard him talking before to some Hungarians. So he spoke Hungarian. And I was telling him his story. And I said, now wait, who is the boss in America? Who is the president in America? I didn't know. We couldn't know anything about America very much. And he said, Eisenhower. And I said, okay, will you write for me? I'll dictate it to you because I can't write in English. And I'm going to tell him his story and he will change his mind if he is making these decisions. He said, that's not going to happen. Please don't ask me such crazy thing. Please, please, please write the letter. He said, fine, let's go over there. Let's sit down over there at the bench and you can dictate it to me. I stood front of the American embassy with people who were disappointed and hopeful and eventually leaving, saying, okay, they tell us we can go to Italy. They tell us we can go to France. That's a free country. That's why we left Hungary. So let's go there. And I said, no, I am going to go to America. And he did write that letter. And 11 days later, he had a piece of paper and he kept saying, Nicole, it worked. What do you mean it worked? They changed the quota. They gave 100 more spaces to people to come to America. He said, I can't believe you made me do this. And I did it. And you can go. You're the top of the name list. You can go to America. I remembered my mother saying, never give up. I did get to America on an American troop ship. And I remember seeing Statue of Liberty. I was kneeling on the ship, on the floor, with many of us Hungarians crying, thanking God, thanking whatever people believed in, because we never gave up. Well, I was supposed to have somebody waiting for me to pick me up when I arrived from the ship. And I waited and waited, and nobody showed up. Finally, they said to me, well, we have a way, we know where you're supposed to go to be able to be allowed to stay in this country. And I did go there. They helped me to go there. I was processed. And then they put me on a train to go to New York and meet the persons who will take care of me, the family who will take care of me. It was winter, it was cold, and I arrived to New York City, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm not sure who made that plan. That's a pretty crazy thing to do. I had my papers. I had a little bag with an extra sweater and shoes. And I waited, and I had my name, and I waited, and nobody came again. Well, I saw on the right from where I arrived a lot of lights, and light drew me as if it would be a bug or a fly, because we only had 15 lights, 15 ways, 15 times to lighten up in Budapest. We didn't have so much light. We lived in the darkness. So I arrived and it said Times Square. And I knew I was in America. All that light, all that cars, all what I heard about. And yet I had nobody to take care of me. These two women came up to me. They had a lot of makeup on, very short skirts, even though it was freezing. And they asked something about me, but I couldn't speak any English. And they just kind of took me and they said, they motioned, stay here. Anyway, they became the people who took care of me. They were prostitutes, not because they wanted to, but they ended up because of circumstances. And they decided that I am going to get out of there. I'm going to get off the streets. I can have the dream of go to college and eventually bring my family. So they started to talk to each other and started to talk to some of their clients. And the clients had some people that they could talk to about this immigrant Hungarian girl. That's how I ended up with being in a university, having a scholarship in a university. And the only thing that I had to do is to speak about the world in Hungary. Now, how I really spent my time while I was on the street is with Joe. Joe was also a homeless person with a brown bag and something he was drinking from the brown bag. I didn't know what it was until later. He was an alcoholic who lost everything because of alcoholism. And then he found me. He took me to the big garbage cans on the street at night, and he pulled out the thrown away New York Times. And he said, close your eyes and put your finger on the newspaper 5 times. And those were 5 words that I had to learn. And that's how he taught me English, how to read. And that's how he found a new purpose. And that's how he decided that he will go back and try to be sober. When I went to college, I was working very hard. I didn't speak very well, but I was getting a job to babysit to a baby. I didn't have to speak good English with the baby. And I had food. Food was something that made it equal to me freedom. I had food other than onions and potato and some old rotten food in Hungary. I learned English and I saved my money to take a train back to New York and see Joe. When I got there, I found out from my friends, from my 2 women friends who helped me off the streets, that Joe died 2 days before I got there. I remembered my mother also used to say, shift happens. Things change. You become what you focus on. So I went back to the university and I started to look for people like me who didn't have the opportunity to get off the streets. I graduated and I started to focus on negotiating again to help people who didn't have my luck. I worked with refugees who needed some idea of how to make America working for them. I went back to New York and I became a real American. I got married, I had children, I bought cars. That was seen to be the American. But mostly, I decided that I am going to figure out how to make a difference. I became a banker because understanding money and understanding how money works was one way that I knew that I would be able to make a difference. I believe that something have to happen now in America. I believe that there is still a lot of people like Ukraine. So I am working on making sure that I will be able to help the ones who coming here and make sure that they will have an easier time, that they don't have to be on the streets. I wanted to make and want to make sure that freedom is worked for by all of us, everybody, because there is still a lot of people outside of here and in America whose freedom is not so easy to accomplish each day, every day, everywhere. I don't know what to say. I wrote a book, and the book is about how to negotiate, because I realized from the moment I was born, I had to negotiate. I learned from the moment I was born that if I smiled, I got picked up. If I cried, I was fed. I realized that I would have never been able to leave Hungary and escape if I wouldn't been able to negotiate. I would have been never able to get to America. When I got here, I actually was invited to meet President Eisenhower. And a woman who was in her office. And I was introduced to her because of her that I was in America. She got the letter that was sent. And she went and said, oh my God, this letter must be read by somebody who's close to our president. And she is the one who did something instead of just was surprised. Take action. That's what I know. Take action, and every day especially know we have an opportunity that we can take action and make a difference. For us, constantly negotiating with ourselves, what to do next, where to go, what is the priority. I think talking against communism, it is something that's very important today. To talk and plan and fight for our freedom in our own neighborhood, our country, and using technology where we can connect to help people negotiate inside ourselves and with others at all time. So freedom is not free. Still, for many people here, right here, are you volunteering? Are you writing checks? Are you stepping and standing with homeless people and ask them how they got there and how we can help them to get off the street? Freedom is not free without paying attention to it every day. Thank you.
All right, come off mute and give Nicole a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Nicole. And we'll open the floor for questions. Patricia, you're first, I see. If you want to raise your hand virtually or, like this, whatever, I'll try to catch you. So, Patricia, go ahead.
Good. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us and telling us your story again. Now, did somebody sponsor you? Was it a Jewish organization in America? Did they sponsor people like you to come over?
Yes. No, to come over, no. No, what happened is there was an organization, yes, in Austria, and they are the ones who worked with our country to bring a ship, which was General Walker. And that's who brought me over. And I was supposed to be met with somebody when I arrived who actually didn't show up. And there was some kind of confusion that I never found out what happened. So the women that my Catholic nuns would not approve of helped to find one of their clients who then found an organization who were there for the people who were coming to at that time to America from Hungary.
Amazing.
And I, from reading the New York Times, I was also then sent to Connecticut for 2 months to learn English. And that was sponsored by another organization. And then, of course, I went to university. And the price of my university there was that I had to go and speak about communism to different organizations, churches. And that's how I started to be actually a speaker.
And one other, I'm being greedy, asking two questions. I remember when I've heard you speak before, you told us of a time you were in front of a firing squad.
Oh, yes. Well, I knew that possibly I will be caught. And as we were going, we were caught. And there was only 2 soldiers, and they said, we are very sorry. We are very short of people today. So we are going to put you over there in this big barn, and tomorrow we will come and then shoot you because you really need to be shot. We thought, that's good. We have another day. What are we gonna do? We talked and we talked. And one of the things I didn't say, that in Hungary, what I had to do, we had to learn Russian. And I hated to speak Russian. I hated to read Russian and learn Russian. And my mother said, Nicole, you never know when you need Russian. So they came next day and lined us up, and each of us had a person who was supposed to lead us over there, front of that white fence, line us up and kill us. But we were not supposed to talk to those people while we were going. And I said, what am I gonna lose? So I said, do you have a family in Russia? Yes. He kind of said, shh. And I kept talking. Are they hungry? Yes. He stopped saying shh. He was engaged. And I knew that this is my big chance. I said, look, if you don't shoot me, then please, I will meet you back here where you just picked me up, and I'll take you to America, and we bring you family, and you'll never be cold and they'll never be hungry. As we went, I realized, as he said kind of, yeah, that he had no idea how to do this. He had a job to shoot me with a lot of other people. His boss was there. I said, I'll tell you how we're gonna do this. I'm gonna keep eye contact with you. And you're going to shoot, but I am going to drop to the floor just a second before you shoot. Let's see if this works. And then I'll see you back here.
Amazing.
Keeping eye contact with somebody who's going to kill you is not easy. But since then, I teach people how to keep eye contact.
Cool.
How to get what you want because you connected. I
Amazing.
went back and I waited for him for 2 days. He never showed up. I don't know whether he was just scared, he didn't know how. But right here, as I'm talking to you, that soldier who had the ability, willingness, and caring to let me live is always with me.
A question. This is something that's been kind of perplexing to me. It's like fascism, which is of course absolutely abhorrent and has been thoroughly dissected, and but why is it in the West, particularly, communism has been treated more charitably than fascism when it is every bit as abhorrent?
I am not sure if it's treated, what did you say?
More charitably.
Charitably. I
Because
don't.
every now and then you get like articles in the New York Times talking about how the sex was so much better under Stalin and how the opportunities were so great under the Cultural Revolution in China, things
Well,
like that.
I think communism has been there longer and more consistently. And during communism, we had certainly more food, and and it lasted longer. And communism had some good things, which is interesting you're asking me, because in one of my speeches, talking to a group of Americans, they threw actually tomatoes and food at me because I said there were some good things about communism, such as we didn't have to pay to be learning how to be in sports. That was free. A lot of music, learning dancing. There was a lot of things was paid by the government. And I can.
Yeah, wasn't that also the case under fascism? It's interesting how it's like they're both, do this sort of thing, but somehow rhetorically communism has been, it's like, I even think of, when Herbert Matthews helped Fidel Castro into power in Cuba. Right. Why is the West still helping communist regimes? It's just.
Well, I don't agree for helping communist regime.
Neither do I. I think it's horrible.
I don't agree to forgive communist behaviors that has been incredibly cruel. And I mean, during communism, we had people come 1 o'clock in the morning, took a whole group of people from who lived there in a family, and then shot them because they wanted, some important communists wanted the apartment. I mean, communism was cruel and is cruel, but many times we maybe just don't know enough or care enough. I mean, I love this country. And when I wonder about some of the things that aren't working, and some of them not, people say, well, if you don't like it after all these years, go home. I don't want to go home. I love this country, so you speak up, so you question, so you figure out how you can influence and negotiate people who could make a difference.
Colin, haven't you ever heard the phrase, keep your enemies close so you can know where they're at? That's pretty much it with our government.
We have
all kinds of countries.
We have questions from Teresa. Teresa, can you go ahead and ask your question and then?
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much. This was incredible. I'm so delighted. Thank you. This is my first time here and I'm so glad. My question, during your talk, one of the things that I especially appreciated was the wisdom that your mother passed on to you.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could share some other things that she passed on to you and what her background was like. There's something really magical about how she was wanting to leave an impression with you. So if you could say a little bit more about your mother, that'd be great.
Oh, well, yes. My mother was an incredible woman who survived the death camp, Auschwitz, sometime naked in the cold. And she said she stayed alive because she could make herself smell her babies and feel their skin and leave where she was. She kind of felt she was freer than her captors because she can go and be in places where they had a job, just it was a horrible job. My mother was the one who came back because she believed I was alive, and she knew that Hungary was bombed and very few people could have stayed alive or did stay alive, and spent 8 years every single day after she made plans around the different townships in around Budapest. And she got on her bike and went every single day, several kilometers, saying and telling her stories to people. Do you know a child who has red hair and green eyes and came to this city, this area that she was found? And she did this for 8 years, never gave up trying to find me. Until one day, a hot summer day, she got to this little village and somebody said to her, she told her story and somebody said to her, now don't talk to that woman who's sitting in the ground in the dirt. She is the crazy one. Of course, she immediately sat next to her and told her story. And that woman said, well, they think I'm crazy because I flunked the head of the Communist Party's son in high school. They took away everything and I am here and they call me a crazy person. And she said, by the way, you know, there's a cloister right there. And the milkman said, there was a child there, a little girl. It might be your daughter. And I was that daughter.
Wow.
Yeah,
So you
you
never
know,
know. You never know. You just sit down with everybody in the dirt or anywhere because everybody has something to offer.
Yeah.
Just
and Nicole,
stay curious. She kept saying to me, Nicole, you must stay curious, open and curious.
and I remember her. Nicole, I remember Magda. I mean, she was really something. I was lucky to meet her, but Nicole, I have to tell you, when I don't know how the rest of you feel, I watched you feel and recall,
Yeah.
not just give a presentation,
Yeah.
but really relate the story. And I think, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I think I was there with you
Yeah.
when you were in the different phases. Two things. I'm just so surprised that Hayas wasn't there to help you. And for those of you that don't know, that they.
Oh, I'm glad you bring that up. I forgot to tell you, or I chose not to. I chose not to because there is so much anti-Semitism that I'm terrified saying anything about negative about Jewish people or Jewish organizations. I went to Hayas and I told my story, and they said, "You are not Jewish." And I said, "What do you mean I'm not Jewish? My mother was," I told the story. "No, you have green eyes, you have red hair, you don't look Jewish." And never helped me. And who helped me? A Catholic organization.
That is so interesting, because that's been around since the late 1800s. And for those of you that don't know, Hayas has expanded to help the refugees from different countries get settled. That is not just, they don't just help Jewish people, but a couple people you might know that they did help: Alexander Vindman, Sergey Brin, founder of Google, etc.
Right.
But what a mistake for all the blonde,
Susan,
blue eyes.
that story was in Vienna, not in America.
Oh, in Vienna.
It
Oh,
was
okay.
in Vienna.
Then that makes sense.
That's a crazy place, and it was a crazy place. And a lot of non-Jewish people, I found out, went to Hayas because they were more generous, and they had Jewish people coming and say, "Yeah, I'll take 3 people in my house. I will help people." So that's a different story.
That's different. That is a different story. But thank you for this. This was wonderful. And I can't help but think now that Hungary has, what do we say, devolved,
Anti-Semitic.
is so anti-Semitic, Orban, all the stuff in Soros. How do you feel about Hungary sliding back down into the cesspool?
I don't believe they slide back into the cesspool. I think they were always like that. The one thing that communism had, they did not allow open anti-Semitism.
Oh.
They said communists don't hate Jews. I don't know where they get that, because it wasn't true. There was a lot of anti-Semitism hidden. But it was, for some reason, maybe because that would have been kind of distracting with the hate, the focus that they insisted: act like a communist, talk like a communist, focus like a communist. So being anti-Semitic, that possibly would have taken some energy away from them. But there was no question about that there was anti-Semitism. And as soon as the communists somewhat ended for a while, anti-Semitism just came up and was very open, very, very open, very sad.
Okay, we've got 3 people asking questions. Randall, followed by Janice Litvin, and then Bert Hill, you had your hand up.
Okay. Wonderful experience for me to hear you describe your experience here for the last 30 minutes. One comment and then a question. I think, unfortunately, university students today, there would be too many of them who would go out and give pro-communist speeches instead of anti-communist speeches.
Right.
I hope that's a minority of our students. But the question, this is just from a practical person. Did your parents and your brother ever get out of Hungary and get to the United States or somewhere else free?
Yes, yes. That was 15, and when I was 22 years old, I was married and had children and had a career. And I've been fighting to allow my family to leave. And there was a moment where somebody in a communist party was meeting my mother. And she was very well respected because she spoke several languages. And what she also did, she went around to the small towns in Hungary and found art pieces, or really pieces that area were creating. And went to the government and said, if people come from other countries, they have nothing here to buy in Hungary. And how about we start bringing from those little villages their work and sell it? And so she created a whole business for the government. But she didn't get anything out of it. But what she did get out of it is meeting those people, helping them to find pride in something that was kind of a hobby, or it was some practical things, and help them to see that they really are contributors beyond their little village.
Excellent. Janice?
Thank you so much, Tony. First of all, really quickly, I wanted to welcome the people who attended Patricia Fripp's meeting last Saturday, Tonda, Sima, Teresa, and many, I can't see all the names. So just a quick, oh, and Sarah, yes, thank you, Sarah. First of all, Nicole, as you know, I met you back in the 80s when we used to go to Women Entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And the other group that Patricia started that was a sister organization to GGBC back when GGBC was men only. The Women's Breakfast Club, I believe.
Right, Continental Breakfast Club.
Continental Breakfast
Yes,
Club.
hello, I know you too.
Yes. So I have so many questions, but I'll be succinct. Number one is I read somewhere that you were a gymnast as a child in Hungary. I wanted to hear about that. And number two, when and how did you get to the point where you decided to become a negotiation speaker, author, and expert?
Gymnastic. My mother had a plan that we all gonna leave Hungary and escape Hungary. And she felt that it was extremely important that we physically beyond fabulous, because she knew that the walk will be very long. Actually, the walk was just to give you specifics, like from San Francisco to San Jose. That was about the distance. You had another question about
how you became at what point, how did you make the transition to become a negotiation speaker and expert?
I worked for a bank, Bank America, and I decided that what was a
Who's
can you
playing?
still hear me? Can you
Keep
still
going.
hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Keep going.
What I realized that the most important people in that corporation and bank was the secretaries. And I used to say to them, I used to ask them questions, and I used to say to them, you know more than most people, because people talk front of you at meetings and at lunch like you are a piece of furniture, but you are the one who have a lot of power. And so I started to help them to negotiate by, for example, if I put my hand out to a secretary to shake hands, and those days we really shook hands a lot in business, they said, oh, we don't shake hands with secretaries. And I said, yes, you can. Let's start it. I taught them how to shake hands. I remember that. So they said, oh my God. And I said, then you can negotiate. Didn't even know the definition of negotiation because they said, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a salesperson. I said, you have to negotiate for your life every day. Let's practice. That's kind of how it started. And then one of the managers invited me to a meeting, and she said, I noticed that you notice everything. You notice body language, you notice what's in the office. I want to take you with me to meetings. And then I want you to help me see what you saw, share that, and how to get to or change nays to yays. So it kind of became almost like a natural thing. And then I knew that I was born to be a negotiator through my life.
Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for that. Bert, last question.
Well, I think she partly answered it. What did you think of Orban's Hungary today? But I think you answered it for Suzanne Royan. If you had any to add to that, or if that was your answer.
First of all, as I said, I'm not surprised. I mean, anti-Semitism was like paprika, except not good. It was so Hungarian. It was so there. I mean, it's just very painful, frightening. And what I do about anti-Semitism, when people say comments, even here in America, it's not such an even, you know, it was cheap and I kind of got it at a good deal, just like a Jew. I would say, can you tell me more about it? Or I will say, how many Jewish people do you know? And how many Jewish people do you know who actually use their money and give their money and help what needed to be helped? Or I say, where did you get this idea? So I don't let any kind of comments, and my partner doesn't either, and my friends, and they say, well, what can I say? And so we talk about it. I train people how to handle anti-Semitic and horrible things, how to respond to that. Is that answering your question, or am I?
Well, not quite. Somewhat. Orban is certainly moving into a dictatorship, away from democracy and
Yes.
concerns. But I thought he was more Christian oriented than than freedom of Jewish. But I didn't know that, so that was where I was confused.
He is Christian oriented, but I don't see love. And Christianity is love, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
One thing for all of you that have heard what Nicole said, Nicole has always stood up, spoken up, and encouraged those of us that need to be more present. I know Nicole got me active in the Jewish Film Festival, but I think what's so admirable is so many years in a Catholic orphanage, still great respect for the Catholic, but Nicole has embraced, stood up, and spoken up. And for me, she's a role model.
And I'd like to thank you for your friendship and continued support, and Patricia Fripp. We know each other for a very long time, and we all went for the same thing: caring, helping, having fun, being the best at what we do. So I want to thank both of you.
Great.